wanted to show you a little surprise I've got. This is my rucksack, and in here I have my laptop, but I have a few other things that might surprise you as well. Here's a sewing accessories bag, which has a number of different things in there, scissors and everything else. And then down in here is the surprise. It's a little hard to do with one hand, actually. I might put this on the tripod just to make it a little more interesting. One moment, I'll be right back. Okay, so I'll put a few other things that I've got wedged in here. I've just been away on a camping trip, well, cottage trip. So I needed something that was very compact to help me along on my journey. Now, I'm not normally one for anything mini because I do large work. However, in this case, this is the baby. The Baby Lock Companion is very mini and takes class 15 bobbins, digital, bobbin winder, but this is quite fun. This squishes in, but as soon as you, so for extra portability, and then of course it's got a cover on it as well. But it sews reasonably well. Runs on 12 volts, so you can plug it into your car. And I've ordered a battery pack for it, which I will test out, just to see. And this will absolutely fit on my motorcycle. I wouldn't want to do too much large on it, but I hemmed my shorts, or I fixed a tear in my shorts while I was on my trip. But what I've been doing, I've been running tests here just to see if it sews perfectly, and it surprisingly does. A bit crunchy to sew on, not a smooth experience, but I bought it specifically so that I could make, using my Singercraft, make fringe on the trip, because I had a lot of work to do and I just wanted to get really caught up on that. So it sewed fine for that, and I'm very pleased. It's not the most beautiful one. There is another one on eBay at the moment, only one that I found. I don't know if there's any other comparable machines that would work like this. I haven't tried the mechanical minis, but this was a good price because it didn't have the cover, so I used my 3D printer. What I don't like about this machine is this thread thing here. It takes really stupid size spools, so it's not, it does tip up and it kind of works, but I ended up just using my 3D printer to make that, and that makes it much easier to use larger spools, as well as this will take the extender to take super large spools, which is a little more useful for me because I tend to have bigger spools. So what I have is this thing here, and that just sits on there, and it can either sit on the ground or on top of the machine, and that allows, you know, spools to be fed more smoothly, especially the top, the type which have to be horizontal. There's not enough really room in there unless you have a lot of small spools. I don't, so this works really well, and it does sit on the floor, so that works. So here, and I'll show you it working in a minute. I'll just have to change camera angles. Okay, here we have the machine, so we'll thread it up. There's a little clip here behind, which I think when you use the high thread stand that I've invented, it's not strictly necessary, but, and then there's a little clip behind and it just slides in behind. Very normal. If you want to see the clip, there's the clip there, just slides in there. And you can see unfortunately someone lost for this machine. I got it for a very good price, that's why. But someone lost the actual case it came with, but little 3D printing magic, and it's okay. I've got a few refinements I want to make to it, but you know, if I had the real cover it would be slightly easier, but I'll survive. And then the only odd thing about this is, and I've seen this on a few machines, is you go through the left side first before, so the actual take-up lever is on the right side. I've seen that a few times, but just different. Foot pressure or thread tension. The foot pressure is not adjustable, but surprisingly it feeds relatively well. Just grab my thread snips here. It's really hard to thread for me because I have big hands, but I do manage it. Sometimes I find it's easier just to tip the machine on its back to thread. It's light enough you can do it, but I really struggle getting in here. It's possible, but also because of my new varifocals, it makes it even worse. I just can't see anything, so it's a real guess. I've got an awfully small needle on here, which just size 11, which does not make it easy for me. I could use a thread, needle threader, I suppose. That might work. But it's possible, it works. Now, the biggest thing that I really don't like about this machine is they have this foot. And I think it's designed, and it's designed well, but specifically, so it feeds well. Now, the feed dogs are the tough type that I always like, which is like, wow, that's really surprising that they're the good feed dogs. But the feed dogs don't drop, and it's got this one foot. So what it means is you can't, I don't know, but I can't really figure out how to use a zipper foot. It sort of pulls out and it's got these notches. There may be a type of foot which clips in it, but it seems to be, that's it. And yet it's got a buttonholer, so you can't really use, you can use this, it's got a buttonhole contraption that you sit underneath. I've seen them before, but you can't use the machine to do buttons because there's no way to, or zippers. It's a little strange. I will figure it out eventually, like how to, whether I 3D print a different shaft here. I've tried a whole bunch of different shafts. It's closest to the high shank, but the post is too narrow. And then I've tried a brother high shank to low shank converter, and that doesn't fit on the shank. So I'm like, this is a pain in the bum, this. But, you can make buttonholes, that's fine. You could figure a way to probably, like, use a lifter or something, a popsicle stick, to lift it up so it doesn't feed, but I figured out. There's no screw hole here, so it's difficult to use a standard one, but I thought maybe take off the feed dogs, and I've explored that underneath, and it's possible, but that's a lot of work for a set of buttons, but so it's not been thought through perfectly, but it sews well enough, and as an emergency thing, if you're really strapped, you have to go on a plane and it's really small. I mean, you could never do much because it's so small. But seams, yes, but once you start getting into middle seams, so if you had to sew a dress and try and wedge it under here or something, it'd be difficult. But a shirt, repairs, works fine. So let me plug her in and show you some interesting features about this. Zoom in on this. One of the interesting things I've found about this machine is it's designed for up to 16 volts, but it works between 10 and 16. Now the reason I point that out is it does have a slow and fast speed on here. If you look here, here's the slow and fast. So if I turn it on to 10 volts when it wakes up, so it's actually, there's it's at 9 there, so anywhere between sort of 9 and 10. So there's 10, but if you do 10 slow, so that's in the slow, I'll show you. Okay, so we'll show it. That's it. This is it at 10 volts on slow. So you can see, and I'll move down. However, you can then put it on the faster speed, and that's quite reasonable. However, if I got to 16, which is maximum, that's at slow speed at 16, and that's at fast at 16, which is quite reasonable. But you can then realize that if you want to really, if you need to do some very controlled speed, having this adjuster that I've got on this is really cool. But if you were to put it on a car battery, there's your 12 volts slow and your 12 volt fast. So that works really, really well. It's great. So's that. And let me stop it. So's in reverse if you hold the button down. So that's how you can lock your seams. And then of course, if I aim up a bit, I can show you how the stitch select works. So this is start. There is no pedal on this range, it's start and stop. I was thinking of maybe putting a little connector like I've got on some of my other machines, just so I could tweak it with a pedal, but I haven't bothered to worry about that yet. This is your verse, this is your speed, high and low, and this is your stitch selector here. So if I go to 1, then it doesn't have satin stitch, which is quite annoying, but it has a short straight stitch, a longer straight stitch, then a small zigzag, wider zigzag, and wider zigzag, stretch stitch, multi-point zigzag, and then a couple of the fancy ones, including a crescent type, and then the buttonholes. So I'll just go into zigzag here. So that's a small zigzag. Now if you press the reverse with zigzag, it just gives you, it locks it. It doesn't sew in reverse. Let's go over here. See if we can get this in if I zoom out a bit. Oop, wrong way. So it just locks a stitch if you use the reverse with any of the other stitches. And then you press stop. Neat thing is it's always got needle up. I thought that was quite surprising that it did needle up permanently. Then the wider zigzag. Let me just move this because it's not. And then obviously all the standard ones. There's your stretch, multi-point zigzag. I'll show you that one. So that works. The only thing I don't really like is the feeding on it is a bit. It's got the box feed, which means it comes up, moves forward, goes down. There's no, whereas the older types go in a sort of a circular, elliptical. But this one's up, front, down, so it's a square, and you see the matter type. But with that, it's actually not the smooth. This machine is not that smooth, and I've seen this on my FAF Creative Vision. Because it uses the box type, it yanks the fabric. It's not as smooth. You can sew on it, it's just not that smooth when it's feeding. But it works, and that's the most important. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. If I go to the stretch stitch, which is number 5, as you see, you have to cycle through to sew. So this is so it's the stretch stitch, back and forth. But there's one stitch length on this. It gives you what the stitch is set to, which is not always perfect, but it's more than acceptable for this sort of a type of machine. And it sews typically in a left-hand position, which is good because it gives you the most space under the arm. And then if I lock the stitch, you see it just doesn't move, it locks the stitch, and that's how you sew on this machine. So I'll show you winding the bobbin, which is quite interesting, in a second. I have a feeling okay. Up here in the top, there's a little space where you can store a couple extra bobbins. You also have a stitch ripper. As you can see, I struggle getting my fingers in there, so having a pair of tweezers makes a big difference. And then pull this out. It's a nightmare for me with big fingers. Down here in the bottom, it comes with a pack of needles, brother needles. I think they're size 11, so they're quite small. And then you've got this, which is a buttonholer. So or a buttonhole helper, really. What you do is you sit your foot in there and then that works. So that's how you do it. It even has the little clip for the corded buttonhole. But again, without the ability, I thought that maybe in reverse you could put this way, and it's possible, I haven't really tried it yet. If you put it down that way, maybe you can sew buttons and just sit them on there, because you need something to keep the feed dogs, because the feed dogs don't drop on this machine. So that may be the way, but I don't have the instructions for this machine. But that might work. I did sort of try it, but it did tend to squish down, but I think it might just about work like that. It's possible, but I have to experiment. But anyway, it all slips in there really nicely. Oops, finger size problem. So that just slides in the bottom, easy to get out. And you get your stitch ripper, and that just slides in there. And then you can start your bobbins. And then shut it, and it's all good. But the buttonhole on this really reminds me of Husqvarna Viking. There's this little slidey thing here, and when you slide it out pops our little friend here, and you put the bobbin on there, and then when it fills up, it reduces it. Now, what's really interesting about this machine and the design, I went inside it to see how it works, is it reminds me very much of the Elna, because the motor runs directly. There's a rubber pulley which drives all the needle bit, and then when you flip this over here, actually moving the motor, and it touches a rubber wheel in here for this. So there's actually the motors touching this and flipping. When you do this, it's on a hinge spring thing, so it's really, kind of nicely designed, but it actually flips between the rubber wheel on the machine part and the bobbin winding. And if you do it in the middle, then it just spins freely. But it's really quite nice, and then you just put your bobbin on here and wind away. It's not difficult, so it just sits on there like that. And then when you run the machine, what you can see is so winding the bobbin, the button's over here, and you press start, just like this, and I'll show you, and then what happens is that starts spinning, and you still have access to low and high, so you can wind it slower, and then when it fills up, eventually it'll just stop. That little contraption will stop it winding, so I can show you how this works. Once it gets to the end, it just pops off and away you go. So it's really easy to wind the bobbin, it's nice and smooth, and then when you're finished, you go back, you push that in, and then you start sewing. It's a drop-in bobbin, works the same way as all kind of brother machines, nothing fancy there. You just lift this hatch, put in the bobbin, wind it, and away you sew. This machine is really good, actually, in many respects. I would have liked to have seen a more advanced version of this where you could adjust the stitch length, stitch width. There may be something out there. However, for a portable machine, it achieves most of what you want. I'd love to have a feed dog cover. That would work, be really handy. Might try something now just for fun. Okay. So what I did is I took the machine apart just to make sure it's clean and put some new grease on the plastic gears, like the proper stuff. That won't hurt it. What I want to know, let me just remove this tray. So to do the bobbin, it's like this, it's a drop-in bobbin. It does have a metal hook, which is good. Some of these plastic machines have gone to plastic hooks, which one needle break and your machine's finished, so I'm good with that. Oh no, you definitely need this on here. I'm wondering if there's a setting where, sorry, I lost track of my brain. What I did is I took the screws off as well. Oh bollocks, I just pulled this out of the needle. And the feed dogs, it's just standard 2 screws for here and 2 screws for the feed dogs. I was wondering, in reality, if it's possible to use this button holder thing cover the feed dogs. Now this machine probably would not cope so well with free motion embroidery. Maybe, but I'm not sure. Actually, that might work for buttons. Just to put it like that. So let me put the feed dog cover on, because it won't stick properly if that's off, because the thread would catch. However, this might work for buttons. No, it's a bit squishy. What happened? Okay, that might work for buttons, just like that. Let me try the other way around. That hooks over the edge there. Quite good. You know, that might kind of work. So you just have to go to probably 3. Yeah, I think that will work. Whether you could hold a button in there and without it sliding all over the place is a good question. Or I suppose you could pop off the foot. It's not the easiest thing to do though. It's sort of, if you pull the legs apart, it does kind of come off. It's tough to do, but not impossible. Just because it's plastic, I worry about doing this. See, it's really difficult to get that foot off easily. It's design popping. But I think that might kind of work. That's going to interfere if you have it completely off. Though that would be natural, it won't, because it would block the thread going around. However, well, that kind of works. So I think if you do it upside down, you probably can get a button on there. Although you'd have to make sure you're fairly near the edge, so otherwise the button will fall down the hole. Okay, so I think that kind of works. It'll be tough, but not impossible. But if I were to do something on a 3D printer, I'd probably create something very similar to that, but which actually held the button, so it doesn't fly all over the place. Easy done. I might do that for fun, but certainly it works. And then you can do it manually, you know, if you need slower, but it will work. So if you imagine you're sewing a button like that, it would work. Okay, well, possibles. Anyway, there's the machine. It's cute. It works. Could use more features. Satin stitch, proper feed dog cover would be good. It'll do the job for sure. Not as impressive as my mini Kenny, but a hell of a lot lighter. Oops, sorry. Rather lighter. Which is a good thing. You know, if you're really pressed for space, or you need to bring it to you know, if you're a kid or something, you need to bring it to high school or something, and you're really limited for space and weight. It's impressive, really. It works. They could have done a little more with cleverness, but for desperate times when I can't bring my mini Kenny or a full-size machine, so plain, this will work really well. For trips, but as you say, you're really limited on the space here. Had they put the bobbin over here, you'd gain even more space, like an Elna or something. There would be ways of making it work, but it's a good design. It's just a bit more refinement, and you'd have an excellent design for a mini machine. But I like it. It actually sews, and that wins a lot of points with me, because a lot of these are not good enough for people who actually sew. You might be able to repair something briefly and then, you know, the machine will die or something, but this one I like. It actually works as a sewing machine. Anyway, hope you found that interesting. Bye for now. I bought this 12-volt battery pack. You see here. It's, you know, it's not the lowest one. There was one higher as far as number of kilowatt hours you can get out of it. But I just wanted to run a test, and I'm pretty to see how this would work. So when I turn it on, what you'll see is the machine goes on, so it's running perfectly at 12 volts as expected. You get the high speed and the low speed. So here's the low speed. I don't have any thread in it, but I just want to show you. It says find out low speed, and there's the high speed. So this is now a completely portable machine. It's running on a battery, which I'm sure, considering you don't do hours and hours and hours of embroidery on this kind of a machine, would last a very long time. You can trickle charge it overnight, or you just charge it off of a car battery or whatever, but this is running on 12 volts, so this would run off of a 12-volt motorcycle battery, a car battery, forever. You know, there are huge sources. And this will run, I would imagine, many, many hours, because it just, you know, it doesn't take that much juice to run a little motor inside this. It's tiny, you know, not a big motor. So I'm quite pleased. This is definitely 100% portable now. The battery's not all that light. I mean, it's probably a pound, maybe. It's not terrible anyway. I could weigh it, but what if it says on the back? No, it doesn't say how much it weighs. But certainly, it's not terribly heavy. It's certainly lighter than the machine. But to enable to sew completely portable anywhere you want is quite a cool thing. So I'm very pleased that, you know, I just wish the machine was a bit bigger, but, you know, this is definitely a needs-must situation where you have to, if you're really desperate, if you're really limited in space and can't take even your featherweight or an alternative like my Mini Kenny, this is certainly an option to keep you sewing. And you can even do this, as you can imagine, you can plug this machine into a cigarette lighter in a car, and sew while you're en route. Works just fine. Hand cranks, of course, work as well, but for this I like it. Anyway, bye for now.